Welcome to Hump Day Q&A. This is Sophie Acott from Happy Baby Sleep, and this week's question comes from Lauren. Lauren asks, I have a 9-month-old, 8 months corrected, who still needs to be held, rocked or fed to sleep. Any ideas or tips on how to gently transition him to self-settling? So thank you very much for your question, Lauren. There is quite a few things I want to address within this question, so a few layers, so to speak. So first and foremost, the rock, feed, pat to sleep habit can be, quite a difficult one to break. It generally starts quite early on when our babies are newborns. Their awake windows are so small that, it's not uncommon that we miss those. They become progressively overtired, overstimulated from the day, and therefore we resort to, anything with motion or feeding them to sleep, to help them settle and calm, so they can sleep. And, what happens is after the 3 months, after the fourth trimester, so to speak, is that these actions quickly become habits and sleep needs, and they do interfere with self-settling. So most of us already know the key with self-settling is really being able to have our babies go down while they are still awake, or drowsy but awake. And I guess if we are feeding, rocking, or patting or holding our babies to sleep, they are really relying on us to be able to help them get to sleep. So a lot of the time they're actually going down into their sleep space while they're already asleep. So naturally it does interfere with self-settling. Not all babies are affected. I do know the majority that I work with, obviously, I do notice that it is a problem. So the going down already asleep causes them to wake prematurely from naps or frequently overnight because they're unable to transition into the next sleep cycle without help from mum and dad. However, I do know babies who are fed to sleep well up until 12 months or beyond, and can sleep through the night perfectly. So for the majority, I would say that it does become an issue over time. And so I just wanted to touch on a few things today. Perhaps the reason why our babies wake prematurely when they are rocked to sleep or fed to sleep. Why this habit can become such an issue, and also some solutions. So I guess the first thing is that just to address with baby sleep patterns, their sleep cycles are relatively shorter than adults, so around 45 to 50 minutes. And what happens is that first stage of sleep's around 10 minutes, and that's when they go into a light stage of sleep. So if I'm talking in context of a baby feeding to sleep, you would notice that they've got their eyes closed, they're still sucking, but they're pretty much asleep. They might be twitching. After that 10 minutes, however, they do go into, and give or take, obviously a few minutes either side, but, after 10 minutes or so, they do go into a more deep, heavy state of sleep. And that's where you may notice they drop off the breast or bottle, and they seem that they're sort of like, they're very quiet, calm and still. And that's where most of us as parents go, woohoo, drop them into the cot and ninja out the door, only to have it short-lived, unfortunately, because they wake around 20 minutes later. And that 20 minutes later is when they come into, out of that deep state of sleep into a lighter stage of sleep at the end of that kind of 50-minute sleep cycle. And what they tend to do is, when they're coming into that lighter sleep cycle, they do address their surroundings. So acknowledging anything that perhaps has changed from when they went to sleep to currently. And when we are rocking to sleep, or any behavior or patterns or anything that we're doing to sleep, to get them to sleep, if they're already going down to sleep, they will wake generally needing the same form of movement or feeding to get back to sleep. They can wake quite disoriented, even if they are familiar with their sleep space, even if it's the same place that you're putting them down to sleep every single time. They still may wake disoriented or confused because they don't know where you are. Last time they knew, when they were falling to sleep, they were on the breast, and then they wake up and they're in their cot, and that can be confusing. So that is why we can notice that we do put them down, and 20 to 40 minutes later, they're screaming out for our intervention again. And it can be really frustrating for parents who spend, a good chunk of an hour or so trying to rock or feed their babies to sleep, only to have them wake after 20 minutes and needing to go through, that whole process again. It can be really frustrating and exhausting. So I totally understand that. You know, hopefully we can avoid it. A lot of times it's not necessarily the easiest habits to break. I think most importantly, as parents, we need to be ready to make the change. So I would clear your calendar. I would make sure that there's no other transitions going on at the time. You've got the support, whether that's, you know, your support from your spouse or husband, wife, and you know, also family or friends, because it's really tough trying to do it on your own. There may be some tears, which is totally normal. It's just our baby's way of expressing that they're you know, they're going through a change and they're uncomfortable, and they might be a little bit, they obviously have some emotions around it. You know, crying's a really healthy, natural way for our babies to release their fears and stresses and anxieties and all other emotions. So I definitely support that 100%, so long as it's in your responsive presence, and you know, whether you're holding them or you're right by the side. I don't opt for a cried out philosophy when you're doing this at all. You've just got to be natural, gentle as possible, you know, because especially depending on, you know, if you have been like Lauren, rocking, feeding, or patting to sleep or holding to sleep for 8 months of their life, it's all they've ever known. So, you know, these sort of things don't happen overnight. So just going through some solutions now, I guess, you know, the first thing is, you know, routine. So an overtired baby, and on the flip side of that, an undertired baby, are going to be so much harder to settle in general. So, you know, if we miss that sleep window, if perhaps, you know, it's too long, too short, then they're always going to need more intervention from us, full stop, anyway. So even if for a baby who can self-settle most of the time, that's why I guess, you know, when we experience leaps and teething and those sort of things, I guess, you know, we can revert to these sort of habits, because it's very common that our babies become overtired at these stages and at these times, overstimulated and in pain. So need a little bit more from us. But you know, most of the time, if we can get that sleep window as optimal as possible, I have an article below on getting into a routine, which is has awake times rather for the first 12 months, and I also have a 0 to 24 month sleep plan, soon to be 0 to 3 years, on my website, where you can access pretty much all the routines and troubleshooting tips for babies from birth until 2 years. So you can check that out for sure, and that can help just making sure that your baby's going down, not too overtired or undertired. So that all of a sudden, that's probably the biggest thing that will is the first step to reducing the amount of intervention that we have at sleep times and encouraging self-settling rather. I also have an article on self-settling, which I'll include the link below. So, and then I guess, you know, having positive sleep associations is really important. So our kids, like we do, you know, thrive on routine, thrive on consistency. So positive sleep associations are those that, you know, remove us as the main thing that helps them get to sleep. And they're things that anyone can do. So, you know, if they're going to childcare, or if you've got grandma, grandpa looking after them, that, you know, these sort of things can remain consistent and gives your baby a heads up that it's time to go to sleep. So such things include, you know, white noise, keeping the room nice and dark. Another thing about a dark room is it signals to the brain to release melatonin, which is sleep hormone, and it also avoids any distractions. So in a light room, your baby, if they can look around, they can become distracted at sleep time. So we want sleep time to be sleep time, and that's for another reason I say get rid of all cot mobiles and anything else in their cot other than a comforter that may prevent them from going to sleep. So white noise, dark room, keeping them nice and warm, making sure they're not too hot or cold. So 19 to 22 is the optimal temperature for their room. I know this is not always easy to maintain, but you can definitely try your best. I have a bedding guide in my 0 to 24 month plan as well, so that can help try the very best you can to keep that consistent. And then, you know, a comforter is always really nice. It can just make that transition a little bit easier when you're trying to break these sort of habits. Having a comforter, you know, that maybe smells like you, if you can wear it down your top. If you're breastfeeding, you can express milk on it to encourage that bond. Also communicating these changes, so you don't want to just be, you know, all of a sudden cold turkey, you know, going from feeding to sleep, putting a baby down in the cot. You know, it's probably a little bit too abrupt. A lot of these things, like I said before, can take time. So, you know, even if it's slowly removing your intervention over time, you know, going from feeding to sleep. I find a lot of the time going from feeding to sleep to even, you know, holding to sleep or rocking to sleep is a nice transition. It's still reaching for one step that's a little bit better, I guess. And one step better than holding or anything that you're doing, like holding or carrying them to sleep and going to sleep on you, if they're going down to sleep in their cot, even if you're helping them, if they're going to sleep while you're doing something for them, say patting them to sleep in their cot, at least they're in their cot. Like I said, no one size fits all, but if you can remove your intervention over 3 days, I've got some other useful tips, and links below that may help, with feeding to sleep. I always think the Elizabeth Pantley's gentle withdrawal method is always a good one for that. And, like I said, with just self-settling, you want to be able, the key is always getting them to sleep in their sleep space while they're still awake, while they're still a little bit drowsy, so they're not relying on you, and that's going to set them up for positive, healthy sleep patterns, ongoing. So I hope I've answered your question today, Lauren. I'm sorry, there's plenty of more information. I do have a link to another article that I wrote on breaking the rock, feed, pat to sleep pattern below, so check that out. And any questions, please feel free to comment on the thread below, and look forward to your questions next week. Thanks, guys.